Hello and welcome to the Under Centre podcast. My name's Phil Malloy. I'm joined by a whole host of characters. I have, of course, Mr. Jake Woolhead. Jake, how are you?
Living the dream every day of my goddamn life, Phil. Thanks very much for asking.
A man I know a lot about, Rhea Malloy. How are you?
Yeah, marvellous, as usual.
The same slow internet, it appears, down in Rush. We're basically emailing you our questions now at this speed.
Well, it was good until Adam came on. I'm not sure what happened there.
And as Ryan alluded to, and as we have mentioned, if you're following kind of our socials and the shows over the last couple of weeks, we are growing our team here at the Under Centre podcast, and we are delighted to be joined on a permanent basis by Adam Wilson. Adam, we know you through the league. You play up north. Give the listeners a little bit of context for you. Introduce your team that you support and let them know what kind of biases you'll be holding strongly during the course of the show.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here, first of all. Thanks for the introduction. As you said, I play up north. But I am a Pats fan, and hopefully it'll be a little bit better, but we'll see how things go. I do tend to be biased, but I will try and be a bit, I'm sure we all are, but I do try and be a little bit lenient to other teams.
Well, you personally couldn't be on this show without being too biased.
Yes, well, we're glad to have you on. If nothing else, just to kind of switch up the accents a little bit. I think our Irish audience is probably a bit bored of all the Dublin accents at this point. It's probably better to get a bit more the sexiest accent in the world, some people say, Adam.
Definitely not.
Well, we are in the full swing of the preseason, which means there's some kind of proper storylines to talk about at last. And we kicked off the preseason last week, and we've been speaking out about it a little bit now. And there's been a few games ongoing. We've just cleared the second round of games for the preseason. So some storylines, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But the first one I'm going to kick off, we have Rian here with us. He is a Panthers fan, and the Panthers have announced, to everybody's absolute surprise and amazement, that they are going to start Baker Mayfield as the starting quarterback for week one this season. Rian, you must be absolutely gobsmacked. I don't think anyone saw this coming.
Gobsmacked, but delighted. Now, this whole saga has driven me crazy from the very beginning. The fact that Matt Rule wants to make this a meritocracy, right? Like, nobody gets a job straight off the bat. Ike Ekwonu was listed as the second choice left tackle on the depth chart up until after the first preseason game. I mean, I get it. You want people to earn their jobs, but also you don't draft a guy 6th overall to sit behind someone. And it's the same thing with Baker Mayfield, right? When they brought him in here on the 6th of July, nobody in their right mind was thinking this is now going to be a quarterback battle. Sam Darnold has an opportunity to beat out Baker Mayfield. Matt Rule always talks about this meritocracy thing. Everybody earns a job, but I think merit flows two ways, and Darnold failed in that respect over the last couple of years. He failed his audition for this starting job. It should have been Baker's from the very beginning. And he should have been getting first team reps for as long as he's been in the Panthers camp. I think it's really put a stall on Baker Mayfield's development within the team. But, we got the job done in the end, so happy about that.
Adam, I wanted to ask you that. Irene kind of touched on it there. Obviously, as a Panthers fan, you're going to be frustrated when you have the new guy come in that everyone kind of knows is going to be the starter at week one. It's just about when the official announcement comes. But as Ryan mentioned, they were kind of trading first team reps between him and Darnold. How much do you think delaying the decision, even if it was only by the second preseason game, is going to affect the development of that offense, given that Baker has come in slightly late? It is not an inherent system that he's used to. He's going to have to, like every new quarterback, learn the new system, the new language that comes with that. How do you think that's going to affect the Panthers going forward this year?
I mean, they probably should have brought him in a bit earlier, because I don't think Donald was ever going to do much for that offense. I think he's still seeing ghosts from the Patriots hit him that time. I think they drafted Matt Corral. I think he was always going to be redshirted, whether it was Donald or somebody else. Unfortunately, he's now out for the season anyway. So I think Baker should have come in and had everything set, get the offense ready to fire from week 1. And I just think it's going to set them back at least 2-3 weeks.
Jake, how important now?
I think
Sorry, go Ryan.
I think the only saving grace there is week 1 is against the Browns. That is, the word redemption game gets thrown around an awful lot. This is an absolute revenge game for Baker Mayfield. And we know when he has a chip on his shoulder, he plays lights out football. We saw it in his first career game in college for Texas Tech. He lit it up that day. And I think he's going to do it again versus the Browns. I think that's the only reason, though. If he was starting against some other team, he'd be on the back foot.
Jake, I presume, as always with the Panthers, that having Christian McCaffrey in the back pocket, especially at the start of the season when he's technically healthy, is going to be a big help to him. And kind of, even if they get those first 3 games under their belt with him at absolute full strength, that's got to help him settle in a little bit, right?
Yeah, having a running back like Christian McCaffrey is certainly going to help you when you're kind of new to an offense. You always have that reliable check down option. He's going to make you look great because you throw it from 5 yards off the line of scrimmage and he runs it for 60 yards. It's going to make you look good. But the Browns are a good team. Like, we're not forgetting that the Browns actually are a pretty solid team defensively. I'm not actually. Who's the backup quarterback at the minute? Or who's the starting quarterback?
Jacoby Brissett, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, he's not even the worst. He's not even the worst backup quarterback to be having starting for the first game. So while Baker might play his revenge game or his redemption game against the Browns, he's still going to be against a tough defense and an offense that has still got Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in the backfield, a 2-headed dragon there to run against. So it's still going to be a tough game. It's actually going to be a pretty exciting game, I reckon.
Rin, what have you thought of the Panthers preseason so far while we're on the subject? I believe the secondary has looked pretty good. It was a pretty scrappy affair between your Panthers and Adams Patriots by all accounts on the inter-team scrimmage that they had before this preseason game. Have you been keeping track of any storylines? Are you generally positive about how the preseason is going, or has it been kind of just very quiet and kind of mellow over there in Panthers land?
Well, I think inside of the Panthers organization, there is a lot of optimism about this season. Like, in terms of just how things are going, we've added key pieces at a lot of different positions. They might not be huge names, but they're the kind of spots that we will probably end up going from good to great, particularly on defense. So defensively, the Panthers were ranked number 2 overall last season. And this season, they've added a few players. They've kept hold of their decent guys. And obviously, JC Horn is coming back from injury, who was our first-round pick last season. So I think there is a lot of optimism. The one thing, though, that came out, and Adam alluded to it earlier, is that our new draftee, Matt Corral, has now been injured for the season. And what we saw during those preseason games was he played behind an O-line outside of Cade Mays. The entire O-line that he's played behind are going to be cut before the 53-man roster. I think for a guy who you've spent, draft capital going and getting, we traded up to get him. Why are you putting him out behind these terrible O-lines, particularly when PJ Walker, say, got the start versus the Patriots behind some of the better O-linemen? I just don't think he'd been put in a very good place to succeed, and certainly wasn't given the tools to improve his game since he joined the Panthers.
Yeah, and we were talking that a little bit because obviously the first preseason game, the Panthers played the Commanders. So we were both watching that game and you commented on it where they left Matt Corral really at the end as a kind of an almost end note to the game to kind of get him in and get him a bit of action. And especially, okay, I understand if theoretically they hadn't made the call between Darnold and Mayfield about who's going to be the number 1 guy and the number 2 guy. But surely that PJ is going to be the backup and that he has plenty of reps. You know what you're going to get out of him. And so surely the value would be seen, as you said, that kind of little bit more kind of second and a half, third team, as opposed to third team and dregs offensive line, and kind of see what Matt Corral can get. And also, let's be honest, make him feel a bit more comfortable on the pitch because he knows where all these lads are on the depth chart as much as anyone else.
Right, exactly. And we saw him be really uncomfortable in that first game against the Commanders. I think he went 1 for 9 for 8 yards, which is not great, obviously. But, you know, PJ Walker got 2 quarters ahead of him behind better O-linemen. And the thought there is that maybe this was like an audition for PJ for the rest of the league. They're obviously going to cut him. So he's a Matt Rule guy. He played for him at Temple. And there's this narrative going around that he was, you know, giving him an audition. But I mean, we saw him start 2 games over the past 2 seasons, 2 victories as well. I don't think teams need to be seeing him in the 3rd and 4th quarter in preseason games to get a read on how good or bad PJ Walker is. So throw the guy in who you've spent all your draft capital on and you want to develop.
Well, I don't think we've covered the Panthers yet in our kind of preseason looks at the different divisions. So hopefully you'll get a chance to kind of fill us in a little more towards the end of the season. But we'll move it on there. And another draft pick from this year's draft for the New York Giants was in the news this week. They were playing, I don't remember actually who they were playing. Was it Arizona they were playing in the preseason game?
Cincinnati.
The Bengals.
Cincinnati, the Bengals, yeah. And Kayvon Thibodeau has been injured in a kind of I think the official term is a cut block. It wasn't a chop block because it wasn't a high-low, but a cut block. Really divided professional Twitter. A lot of the pundits condemned it. Really big names came out and said this is unacceptable. But as far as we know, it's in the rules. He was inside the tackle box. I've seen the replays. He was certainly braced for it. It wasn't a blindside or a dirty hit. Jake, obviously one of your big players, a guy that you would have been very excited to see play. Give us your biased opinion and also maybe what it means for this Giants D-line. They have said that he is out for 4 weeks, but also somehow will be available for week 1. I don't know how that maths lines up, but anyway, I think that's a bit of Giants maths. But yeah, just walk us through it. What are you guys thinking at the moment?
Cut Thaddeus Moss, fine him and get him out. No, I'm only joking. It's all right.
You're on the Rich Eisen stream of things. Penalty, fine him, suspend him. The only acceptable response.
That was a fairly big overreaction for Rich Eisen on that one. Like we all know, it was a legal hit. As much as it's a bit shit when it happens every single game, multiple times over and over, that somebody just happens to get injured from it. And we were just fairly lucky to have it only be an MCL sprain rather than him out for the year with an ACL tear. So count their lucky stars on that one. I mean, it's probably just 2 young players. I think the week before, I was only reading today that Thaddeus Moss was kind of had gotten a lot of blocks or tried to set blocks but couldn't do it. So he was kind of told all week, do the chop block or the cut block or whatever. And that's just a result of it. And maybe it's just a bit of a young Kayvon Thibodeau. Instead of trying to like push him down or run around him, he tried to embrace for the impact instead of, you know, just trying to get around them or something like that and settling for it. But it's an unfortunate injury, part of the game. But we got kind of the lighter end of anything like that. Just an MCL sprain. They're saying 3 to 4 weeks, and what we know, we're 2 weeks out from the start of the season, maybe. So we could be lucky, but there's certainly no need to rush top 5th overall player back to the mix for a season that's certainly not going to be Super Bowl bound anyway.
Adam, we've talked a lot on this show, and I think every show does. Every time one of these injuries happens, particularly to a bigger name player, is it worth playing them in the preseason? Of course, Thibodeau's a rookie. I think that's kind of tilts the argument one way. But in general, what are your thoughts? Just briefly, are you in favor of having the stars sit out a lot of the preseason, just get maybe 1 tune-up quarter or a couple of tune-up drives? Or would you like to see them get a little bit more involved, make sure there's absolutely no rust and that everyone's on the same page for the start of the season?
I think it's a bit of both. You know, maybe the first 2 preseason games, you want to see some of the other players that are on the roster bubble for cuts that maybe want to push their way onto the roster before you start making the cuts. I think today they need to get it down below 80 again. You know, once that's sort of preseason game 3, then you start getting some of the starters in, get more reps, and as you say, getting them on track and on pace.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think it's a good point you say as well. Maybe when that roster is a lot more settled And obviously the NFL is famous for that kind of next man up mentality. But when you are the official 52 men, you got to make sure that that 52nd guy is as sharp and needs to be able to slot in with the ones, because in reality, that's probably how he's going to play. They're not going to trot out a full second team. If somebody goes down, you're going to have to play with the rest of the first team. So getting everyone up to roughly the same speed seems like a good idea.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I like to see kind of even the veterans get involved in the preseason. I think a lot of these non-contact injuries just happen from playing out of nowhere, going 100%, and then you're all of a sudden you tear something instead of like playing your preseason, kind of getting a bit into it. It is an unfortunate part of the game, but it happens during the season. You're not going to hold out your star players anyway.
And in a second beautiful segue of the show already, because I'm aiming for this job off Dara, I think I can do a much better job than him. We're gonna move into players that haven't been part of the preseason so far. One, Mr. Tom Brady. You could argue if there's any player in the league who could probably do without doing any preseason training, it's probably Tom Brady. He's been around nearly longer than half the league teams. But he is returning. Officially gone 11 days, an excused absence by the team. I probably won't go into why he's gone, because I don't think it's really that interesting. They haven't announced what it is, but I don't.
The Masked Singer, is it?
Allegedly, to be honest, I think it's
make it interesting.
To be honest, I think it's one of these things where everyone's hunting for a news story and they're trying to go. It's like amateur detective sleuths. Where's Tom Brady? I think he's probably just gone off to sort something with a bit of family member. Who knows? Have a little holiday. But interestingly, Ryan, he is going to return while all his offensive line that he left when he first left is now gone. They're all in the injured reserve list. So do you think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for him now in this last preseason game? And do you expect him to play a lot?
It's been absolute carnage on that O-line just the entire offseason. But no, to be honest, I don't think he's going to play a single snap of the last preseason game, because why would he? I don't know if anybody's watching Hard Knocks, but they did a section in episode 2 where some of the coaches were talking about how many training camps they've been involved in between being a player and being a coach. And they're like, 15, 16. Tom Brady's been in the league 22 years. There's no reason for him to get involved in preseason stuff like this. Sure, throw a few balls at practice, but don't put yourself out there where you're in a position to get hit at 44 years old. Keep yourself for the first game of the preseason or of the regular season and get on with it.
Any signs so far, Jake, that we're going to see anything other than a typical Tom Brady performance this season? Are you getting any telltale signs that this thing is finally going to come off the rails?
I wish. I wanted that 2 years ago. I wanted it last year. It's still the same. I want him to kind of finish his career, but it might slow him down now that his O-linemen are probably mostly undrafted free agents or something like that at this stage. I don't know who's going to be protecting him, but it's probably going to be someone like me, and that's just not going to use. So maybe if we're lucky, we'll see a halfway through the season retirement of Tom Brady. But no, he's still Tom Brady. He's still going to get the ball out far too quick for almost everyone to sack him. He's just going to be Tom Brady. That's all I can say about it.
Yeah, I guess in the end, it's when players like Tom Brady are around, and we see it a little bit with Aaron Rodgers as well. Sometimes the small stories become big stories just because we want them to be more impactful. I really think those 11 days are not going to add up to much of a difference once the season kicks off. He has been, or at least was, if I remember right, a little bit of a slow starter with that original season with the Buccaneers. But obviously that was quite a successful season, so that didn't really slow him down too much. Anyway, we're done with the news for this week, and we're going to move on to our segment. We are moving on. We're going to look at the AFC East and the NFC East. I had to be very careful there not to slag ourselves, Jake, and say the NFC least, as we're well known.
But we're NFC East is what it is. It's the best division in all of the NFL.
We're going to start off with the AFC East, and I guess, like every division, it's got its own little micro environment. There's a few storylines going on. Obviously, Buffalo have been the powerhouse for the last couple of seasons since kind of Tom Brady left the Patriots. Then the Jets are the dumpster fire that is the Jets constantly since I've been watching the NFL. The New England Patriots, Adam, we're going to get your insights there on how they're getting on and what you think of of how their preseason's going. And then the Miami Dolphins, who always seem to have the right tools in place to have a good season, but it's never guaranteed. So I guess we'll get the easy one out of the way first. Jake, Buffalo are surely just going to win this division again this year.
Yeah, hands down. Who else is going to win it, really? It'd have to take a massive step up from Tua with Tyreek Hill to really change that division up. But I just don't think they're going to be able to beat out Josh Allen and the Bills' defense. I just think it's going to hold up too much for the rest of that division to even get involved in it.
Yeah, Rain, we saw Buffalo in a preseason game this weekend, or at least I remember watching it, and like Josh Allen just looks so impressive. Like they scored. Who were they playing? I don't remember who they were playing, but I think they scored on their first 6 drives of the preseason game. And I know it's a preseason game, but when your starters are in for one drive, you want them to rip the other team apart. And that's what they did. They just didn't skip a beat. Do you think he can get even better, or is just doing what he did last season enough to get this team into a deep playoff run?
This guy is a freak athlete, right? Like, he is the white Cam Newton, but he also has a better arm. He can rip that ball 60 yards on a dime, and he has all those pieces around him as well that just make it even better. The only maybe minor issue with that offense is the running back position, but even then, it's not too bad, particularly when you have a quarterback who can put in an 100-yard game on the ground as well as 300 yards through the air. They're pretty much unstoppable on offense. Now, on defense, I do have my concerns. They have had issues with the pass rush in recent years. But that being said, they have added Von Miller to their core, so he might end up being a bigger threat on the pass rush side of things.
Adam, you've obviously seen Buffalo much more than we have over the last few seasons. Have you figured out a way to beat them yet?
Well, apart from playing them in the snow and just running the ball down your throat, no.
And what about the rumors? The rumors have come out that Von Miller on Twitter reached out to OBJ to get him to sign to that wide receiver core. How dangerous would that make them if they add Odell Beckham Jr. into that wide receiver room?
Oh, just ridiculous. Like, they're already unbeatable on offense. They add in OBJ on top of Gabriel Davis, who could have a bit of an outbreak this year, and Stephon Diggs too. I just don't know who's going to stop that. It certainly won't be our secondary.
But he seems to still have a problem with Patrick Mahomes. Hasn't the Chiefs kind of stopped them in the last couple of off-season runs? Am I misremembering that?
Is it the coin toss? Yeah, well, the coin toss last year, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think the Chiefs came back in from it, won the coin toss, and just went straight up the field and scored to win the game.
Yes. I remember we had a deep conversation about how we were all going to change the game on that coin toss and how it absolutely wasn't fair. But I think if that's the only way you can beat them, I think that's going to be a worry, because you can't rely on that 50-50 shot every single season. Next up on my list is the New York Jets. Adam, there, dumpster fire, and I'm going to let you just trash talk them in whatever way you wish.
I mean, I don't think I can say anything about the Jets. They're just that bad. I mean, Zach Wilson, I don't see how he's any better than Sam Darnold at this point. I haven't seen him do anything. I mean, Mike White came in last year and played better than him.
Well, he did do his mom's best friend.
Well, I suppose he gets points for that, but it doesn't work for him in the football field.
Do you think this is an important year, given, as you mentioned, White that came in, who, given the struggles of the team, looked, let's say, equally as capable as him? Do you think he needs to show this season that he has, let's say, the right characteristics to be a long-term starting quarterback, or at least a passable starting quarterback until the Jets come across some other diamond in the rough?
I think he's definitely going to have to this year. You know, if Joe Flacco is a Super Bowl winning MVP sitting behind him as well, albeit he's probably past it a bit now, but he could easily step in and still fill in a job for a few weeks. You know, White did it last year, but Wilson just didn't look impressive to me at all. Mm-hmm. So I think this is definitely a big year. And I think his injury, I think he's fine for week one, maybe not, but it's definitely a big season for him. And if he can't do it this year, they may try and move on at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I think, can we just pull the brakes on like the Mike White Jets legend forever talk? He had one excellent game and a couple of good games or whatever, but it's like, it's the same with the Davis Mills hype we had last season. It's sustained success, and like, he wasn't picked like that far down and played and probably undrafted free agent and have sustained success in the league. How often does that happen? Like, that's just not going to happen for Mike White or Davis Mills, I'm afraid.
True, but my argument here, Jake, is can you even name any other Jets players? So if we don't talk about Zach Wilson and Mike White, who else do we talk about?
Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner.
Oh, that's true.
Elijah Moore, Michael Carter, Breeze Hall. Come on.
I did. In fairness, I did completely whiff on that draft class they've just had with the 3 first-round draft picks. Ryan, how much of an impact do you think that can have, given the amount of holes that this team appeared to have last season?
Yeah, I mean, like, I felt that the main issue that they needed to focus on this offseason was the offensive line. And I don't think they've really done that enough. It's all well and good bringing in these, like, receivers and running backs who Wilson can throw to and hand off to. But when your O-line is crap, I know this as a Panthers fan, you're not going to have success as a football team. I think on the defensive side of the ball, you know, they had a pretty good draft. You know, Sauce Gardner looks like an absolute athlete, so he may shore things up just a little bit. But still, yeah, for a team that had 3 first-round draft picks this year, I think they're still a long way off where they need to be.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of elevation. If you listen to Jets fans, and I do apologize for the over-eager slander that was happened earlier in the show, but I think if you do talk to Jets fans, they have been very, very strong on how good that first-round draft class was for them. But as you said, Rain, things like Sauce Gardner, it can be hard for those guys to really impact the game, especially if you've only got one on one side. The teams tend to just attack opposite. And like you said, that really good offensive line is what makes bad teams more competitive, because even if you don't have the quarterback behind them, if you have good running backs, which by all accounts Bryce Hall looks like he could be, it can really make a big difference. So having the outside weapons can be quite weakened without a good offensive line.
Yeah, I think the biggest get for them this offseason was actually CJ Uzomah, the tight end coming over from Cincinnati. I think he's going to be a big part of that offense. He's going to help out Zach Wilson. And just rolling it back to everybody's hate on Zach Wilson, after he came back from that injury last year, it kind of looked like the game slowed down for him just a little bit. Like his stats were night and day better than they were before he went down with that injury. So I wouldn't be too quick to say he's a draft bust just right now.
I think one of the big problems for him is the next man that we're going to talk about, and that's the quarterback for the New England Patriots, Mac Jones. He has performed very well, and I think it was a very good pick by Bill Belichick, which is probably not a surprise. But Adam, he seems to fit the system that Bill likes to play. I don't want to call him a game manager because everyone says that's a dirty word, but he does what he needs to do. He's very efficient with the ball. Doesn't necessarily strike long distance, but if you can't get the ball back, then those 10, 15-yard strikes that really suck the clock and that are accurate and on time can cause a lot of problems for teams.
Yeah, I think with Mac, you know, as you say, game manager being a dirty word, but I think last year was just as a rookie year. He came in as a starter. That was just do what you need to do to get the win, whether it's just throwing the dump offs or going deep, which he didn't do very often, but I believe he still had quite a high percentage on that. I think this year they might let him loose a bit more. I think he fitted in quite well because he came from Alabama, from a Bill O'Brien system, to walk straight into what we have done. But McDaniels is gone, and now we have this two-headed, I don't know what to call it, between Joe Judge and Matt Patricia being play caller. How he fits in, I'm not really sure. But the offensive line definitely seems like a weakness at the minute, and that may hinder his development a bit more this year.
Well, we
Matt
saw
Patricia, Joe Judge coming back is a bit like your kids moving out and then just not being successful moving out and having to come back home and live at home again. It's just ridiculous.
Well, we
Yeah, I
did
don't
see
know
back.
who looked at that. I don't know who looked at that Joe Judge tenure at the Giants and said, "Yeah, I want him as
That's
part
my
of my
play
team."
caller. That's
Bring
like
me that guy back. You want a QB Neal on 2nd and 10? I got you, bro. Don't worry about it.
But we did see, Adam, a very interesting run in the Pro Bowl game from Mac Jones. He has also chiseled himself down significantly over the offseason. Would you like to see a bit more of that? A bit more, not necessarily dual threat quarterback, but not to be afraid. He's a big guy, as you mentioned. Took it in and bowl a few lads over on the way to a first down here and there.
I think it may definitely help this year. It just adds to his game as well, that we're not solely relying on him throwing the ball or handing it off to Ramondre or Damien. That we can then turn around and go, there's an option here that he can just go himself and then hit the gritty again.
If
like
they start using him as a runner efficiently, I'm going to be so pissed off for Cam Newton because they just did not utilize him at all when he was there. It was sad to see.
Jake, do you see any way for the New England Patriots to realistically fight for the Bills for that number 1 spot in the division? Or do you think this year is about getting those number 2 wildcard spots?
No, I don't see them realistically challenging the Bills for that number 1. I think their battle has to be like against the Dolphins for number 2, and that's what they kind of have to aim for. If they get number 1 through strokes of luck, then fair play to them. But I think certainly hopping in the wild card would be a win for them.
And Ryan, obviously a classic quiet off-season by Bill Belichick. Were you surprised at all by the little moves that they did make?
To be honest, I can't think off the top of my head of any moves that they actually made over the offseason. I'm sure Adam will tell me, no, they made 10 different moves for big players. But look, I can't remember who they were. Most of the focal point was on the mess that is the offensive coordinator position over the offseason. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a classic Patriots offseason, isn't it? They'll probably end up being successful, even though they don't look like they have talent across the board. I watched them against the Panthers there at the weekend, and to be honest, the first team didn't really do much against the Carolina Panthers seconds. So I'd be worried there. 2 3-and-outs versus the seconds, and they had Mac Jones, all of their top wide receivers in the game as well. So yeah, I'd be a little bit worried there for the offense, but Bill Belichick always pulls it out.
They lost a couple of guys as well, didn't they? In free agency, didn't they lose that cornerback? His name is
Jackson.
JC Jackson, yeah, he's gone. Kyle Van Noy has gone off them as well. And then they obviously lost in Kilharry, but that wasn't really less knowable.
That was a win, that's not a loss.
Well, Adam, we'll give you the final word on the New England Patriots. Give us one new player that you're excited to see this season that you think is going to make a nice difference to this team that we can keep an eye on.
I would have said Tyquan Thornton, a wide receiver, but he's out for 8 weeks.
Anyone else?
But they got Matt Judon,
at left guard. Judon came in last year.
All right, okay, yeah.
As long as he keeps his form up, we'll be fine. But definitely, I think Cole Strange at left guard, will finally replace Joe Tooney. But whether he's able to step up into that sort of level of play straight away will definitely be interesting to see.
Right, well, we'll move on. The last stop on our AFC East tour is the Miami Dolphins. As with most teams, quarterback is where most of the storylines coming out of the Dolphins are. They have obviously got Tua. He has struggled recently to stay healthy. A lot of debate on all of the punditry shows about whether he does or doesn't or has or hasn't shown enough to warrant his starting position and not to be put under pressure or get any undue pressure put on him from the coaching staff. They have obviously signed Tyreek Hill. They did him dirty by showing him an underthrown ball in like the first day of preseason camp, where everyone all of a sudden got an extra bit of ammo for Tua's noodle arm. But Jake, what do you make of Tua? Let's put it to bed. Do you think, is it even too early? Have we seen enough of him to be calling it dramatically one way or the other, or do we need much more evidence before we can say with any certainty?
It wouldn't be professional sports if we didn't overreact far too early on a player. I do think it's too early to be telling him like he's not going to be a starter in this league or he's a backup, but you have to look like his position or his teams weren't exactly exciting teams up until maybe this season, maybe last season you could even say, but giving him a tool like Tyreek Hill, this is your moment. If you can't perform with a wide receiver like Tyreek Hill, who can you perform with then? So I'd give him this season, and then you can start thinking about pulling the plug, maybe moving on to a different quarterback. But certainly at least an average quarterback, you don't want to just move on from immediately until you have some other plan in place.
Ryan, how much of an impact do you think Tyreek Hill can have? Do you think it is like everyone says, where it's automatic that he will be as dangerous as he was in the Kansas City Chiefs, or will it take some scheming to kind of get the most out of him?
I think it's going to take some scheming, but I think the guy who's going to benefit most from him being there is going to be Jalen Waddle, right? Because Tyreek Hill is going to draw a lot of attention. He's going to be doubled on every play, which means there's going to be space out there for Waddle, and he's another speed burner. So, he's gonna get himself a career year. I know he's in only year two at the moment. But yeah, I think he's going to have a breakout year. Absolutely. And I think, Tua, all he needs to do is kind of dink and dunk, not do anything too flashy. And he has the tools around him to succeed. They brought in, 3 running backs this season, all of them starting caliber. So yeah, if he's not able to succeed this season with all that going on around him, he never will.
And finally, Adam, on the Dolphins, they had an impressive defense, but last year kind of went very up and down for them. They did finally get a bit of form coming towards the end of the season. Is their success this year more reliant on the defense playing as well as they can, or Tua performing to the expectations the fans have from?
I think it's got to be on Tua this time. You have to score points to win games at the end of the day. The defense can hold them out if you want, but if Tua's not scoring points, then there's not much they can do. Rain's already alluded to it with the running backs as well. I think that may help them because they've brought in Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert, who can quite easily start anywhere. But I think the big addition for me that hasn't been mentioned quite a lot is Terran Armstead as a starting left tackle, which will certainly help Tua's protection as well.
Yeah. And especially coming into the season, we saw him work hard. There was some images going around of him. I believe he was in the stadium 3 hours before the last preseason game, going through the motions of the playbook. So clearly, you can't ask any more from him on the preparation side. I think now, Adam, it's just time for him to step up and show some of the flash and flair that he showed at Alabama that made him so coveted by all the teams in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he can do that now. He's got an extra weapon in Tyreek Hill. And it's been alluded to with Jalen Waddle. There's definitely things there that should help him this year.
You know why Madden's so different this year? Field sim. It changes everything. So I can finally throw the rock.
Hey, check it. Okay, I feel unstoppable. Losing's impossible.
Put the ball where only I can catch it.
Thing they know.
Yo, hit boy, what you think?
I could make the biggest hit in the game, man.
You ain't lying, bro. We live?
Oh, we live.
We made it till you got dollars. Go out and shop for you.
Taylor?
Wait,
We're live.
Wait, what? Slice up the defense with Field Sense.
You can do that too.
We need some big plays, big hits right now.
Say less.
Game on the line.
Woo, now that's a hit.
Time we do the
Touché.
So, what can you change with Field Sense?
I don't judge, I seen you staying down for the come up till I reign supreme.
Everything.
Let's get it. Yeah. Hit boy. We got another one. Ha. Man, y'all boys ain't ready for this, man.
Right. Well, we'll leave the AFC East because the NFC East, as we all know, is the best, most competitive division in football. They have not had a repeat winner in like 50 years or something. Now, that is competition. That is any given day, someone can win our
It's
division.
real football.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not having the slander of NFC East when it was the most enjoyable football. Well, okay, I won't say most enjoyable football to watch, but it was the most interesting football to watch. We had, in my memory, like 2 seasons where on the last game of the season, 2 or even 3 teams could have won the division in the last game. Jake, I'll start with you, and we're going to start on the Philadelphia Eagles. Everybody has been given it large about this team, about how fantastic they look. But the reality is, it's still Jalen Hurts under center, and he has proved nothing.
I'm absolutely in agreement with you. Jalen Hurts is just, he's not going to help that team get anywhere, I don't think. In the grand scheme of things, yeah, he's fast. Yeah, he can avoid defenders, but can he, on a consistent basis, throw the ball? And now they made some big moves. They have Devontae Smith. They got AJ
Brown.
AJ Brown off the Titans, giving him some good weapons to throw to. So now it is actually on his shoulders, much like we were talking with Tua. He has the tools now to make this happen for the team. So we'll have to see if he has it or he doesn't. And personally, I think he is made of shit. So,
Ryan, for a more biased opinion, do you think Jalen Hurts can be a successful quarterback? Do you expect him to lean on that kind of dual threat that he has, or try and use those weapons that Jake just mentioned to kind of stretch the field a little bit with his arm?
I think it's not as easy as a yes/no answer here, because the league is changing a little bit, kind of migrating towards the more mobile quarterback. So he obviously has that in his back pocket. He is very mobile. He knows how to make people miss. But I don't think he has the arm talent to succeed as a traditional NFL starting quarterback in this league. I thought it was very interesting how they went out and got all of these deep threats at wide receiver, and he is famed for underthrowing the ball. So I just don't understand it. But I mean, like, if he comes out and proves me wrong, I'll be happy enough. I like to see people succeed. But yeah, for me, it's not going to happen. He just doesn't have the arm talent to be a number 1 guy in the league.
Adam, Ryan mentioned there how the wide receivers don't necessarily fit the strengths of Hurts. Do you think it was more a case of, well, the wide receivers we do have can't catch the ball and that's their only job, and they were just trying to get a bit of talent like AJ Brown, a big body guy that if you throw the ball up, look, it's got to be better than JJ Arcega-Whiteside, let's put it like that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what they've tried to do, is just straight away someone going, right, we just need a receiver who can catch, and then we'll work on things after that.
Jake, I'm liking this. We're not getting a lot of balance from our unbiased panelists, so I think this is going to be a lot of slander for the Eagles and our next team up, the America's team, somehow, which they named themselves, the Dallas Cowboys. I presume, again, as always, Adam, this is their year. They're going to the Super Bowl. Nothing can stop them.
Cowboys suck.
Thank you. This is going to be a rough one for any Cowboys fans listening. They probably saw it coming, but
I can't wait to see the next Cowboys 2023 Super Bowl champs tattoo from at the end of preseason game 3.
It's such a ridiculous thing. Every year it's like, yeah, we're going to the top. We have the tools this time. Blah, 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 blah. No, it's not happening for you. Like, you've got Mike McCarthy as head coach. It's not happening for you still.
The worrying thing for me, though, is usually you hear Cowboys fans shouting and roaring about how they're going to win the division, how they're going to go to the Super Bowl, all this sort of thing. I feel like they've been very quiet this season, and that worries me. Maybe they're that stupid that they go, oh, we have no chance, but this is actually their year. I doubt it, though.
Well, they've lost some weapons. They lost Amari Cooper. They kept Dak Prescott, who I ruffled a few feathers on Twitter with my outrage of where Derek Carr was ranked on the top 100 players in the
Dak
NFL.
is Derek Carr on steroids. He's just the exact same player.
That's where I was going. I think, in my defense, okay, I maybe upset a few of the Raiders fans that we have listening to the show. But in fairness, when you break down the stats, Derek Carr is a very stat looks very well on the stat sheet, but realistically, when it comes to those wins that you need, he hasn't got. And it almost directly mirrors Dak Prescott, where they can perform very impressively during the season and look very strong at times. And then it all seems to fall apart either just before or in the first postseason game. And that really is a killer for them. Do you think they can improve as long as they have huge contracts on Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott?
From what I heard only the other day, that they're thinking of moving on from Ezekiel Elliott. So it's going to be a great thing as a Giants or Commanders fan to watch that team crumble with all the money they've spent on it. And it'll just be, it'll be beautiful.
Ryan, what do you think? Because any noise, as you mentioned, you've heard it be quite quiet, relatively speaking, for Dallas Cowboys fans. One of their big things that they're saying is going to be a huge key is Diggs at cornerback, who obviously caught a lot of interceptions last season. I see you shaking your head. You know where I'm going with this. This seems to be I saw just today, he's ranked in like the top 40 of the top 100 NFL players. It seems like they always have these little mini monologues with themselves or storylines that just like constant reinforcement to themselves that we are the best, but objectively, he had a great run of games, and then the second half of the season completely cooled off. He got absolutely torched by his brother in the Pro Bowl.
He got absolutely torched most of the time. Fair play to him for getting all those interceptions, but he was beaten for the most yards of any cornerback ever in history on last season. I don't know where the Cowboys are going with this guy is the future at cornerback. I saw a few clips from their camp, and they had a wide receiver who they drafted in the 3rd or 4th round. Can't remember what his name is. He's probably going to be pretty irrelevant, but he absolutely smoked Diggs on a simple post route. So I don't see where the hype is.
Adam, I think the danger is for players like Diggs, when they get this reputation, they feel like they got to play to that reputation every week. And so I think if I'm the rest of the teams in the NFC East, I'm going to throw a lot of double moves at Diggs because he's going to want to make a play on almost every pass that looks like it's coming his way.
Yeah, you've already alluded to it, but I think Diggs is just completely awful. I honestly think Eli Apple's a better coverage. The current receiving core, they might be better actually moving him the receiver at the minute because they just don't have it besides Lamb. I just don't see Diggs as a long-term corner for them at all.
Well, look, you mentioned CeeDee Lamb there, and I wanted to put out, just to give some sort of balance to this conversation, I'll put an open question. Is there anything good about the Dallas Cowboys, and is it maybe CeeDee Lamb, or is there anything else that you're like, oh, that's not bad? This is open to anybody.
Well, the only answer I have is that their fans are great because they're ever hopeful. And as a Giants fan, that feeds me energy, and I enjoy that.
And Jerry's World looks class. Let's be honest. That's a whopper facility.
Yeah, it is class.
Anyway, we'll move on. We'll move on to the Washington Commanders. I'm going to let Jake close out the show by talking about his New York Giants. And I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to try and not be as biased as possible. We're going to start at quarterback, as we tend to do with these teams. Carson Wentz. I know what everyone's going to say, and I just want to say I agree. He is also a Derek Carr, Dak Prescott. Let's be honest. He will probably be statistically quite average. We've yet to see, or quite nice even, but I don't think we've got any evidence so far to say that he's going to win the games that really need to be won. And that's a problem we've had at quarterback at the Commanders for a while. But I do definitely think it's an upgrade from Fitzpatrick and from Heineke as well. I think there's no doubt about it. So am I happy that he's here? Yes. Long-term solution, I think no, in general as well, because of his age as well. I think he has a lot to prove. But beyond that, I think he is a good enough quarterback for us to have now, because I'm just sick of us being completely inept at the quarterback. And it's not to say there haven't been some good performances, but really when it comes to the cutting edge of the season and these occasions when there's 3-4 teams that could still possibly win the division, and we trot out and in that last game just can't get the ball moving whatsoever. It's really heartbreaking. So, Rian, would you agree with my assessment on Wentz? Have you anything to add? Any digs that you have ready to go? Or do you think I'm being a bit pessimistic?
Do you know what? I actually don't mind Wentz as a quarterback for the Commanders because I think he offers the deep ball threat that Heineke didn't, that Fitzpatrick didn't. And I really think that the Commanders are set up for that type of air raid offense. They have Scary Terry obviously out on the outside. They've drafted in Dotson is his name, is it? Yeah. And I mean, Curtis Samuel, who's a player I have experience with from being with the Panthers, he's also a speed burner who can play in the slot or on the outside. I think they're very much set up for that deep ball. They have a good set of running backs, so they can play the play action off that. And I think Carson Wentz suits that very, very well. We saw that he can play at a Pro Bowl level. We saw it when he went to the Super Bowl with the Eagles. So, yeah, I don't see it as an issue. If he sucks after 1 year, move on, go draft another quarterback. If he's good enough to be the starter long term, happy days. You found yourself a starter.
The problem I have with the problem I have with him, well, if I was a Commanders fan, is that he's absolutely average enough to get you 8-ish wins with that team around you, and then you're going to be a lot higher in the draft pool than, shitter teams.
Mm-hmm. I think though, if you can encourage him enough, and we've kind of spoken about this a little bit on the show, if you can encourage him enough and get him back in a really positive mind frame, I think there is plenty of really positive years, and I think he has high upside but low base, if that makes sense. I don't think he's going to stink. He might be average, but if you can get him, like, he still has enough high side to really stick around for those 4-5 seasons and really push to be good. And like you said, Jake, sometimes in this division, 8 wins is enough to get you into the playoffs. And once you get into the playoffs, it's a whole different story.
But before you go on, let's just say, right, you get to the playoffs round 1, you're picking at like 20 or something, and then you're not going to get like a quarterback if you want one, or the top other player. And then say if you have, like you said, maybe he's good enough for 3 or 4 years, but if you don't win a Super Bowl, or if you're not set up to win a Super Bowl in them 3 or 4 years, it was a waste of time.
So you think we should go for more of a Daniel Jones type quarterback?
Yeah, absolutely. Roll it out. See where you go. Get those fumbles. Get those interceptions.
Speaking of fumbles, Adam, you're a bit more removed from the NFC East. Don't see us very often. Are you kind of following this narrative on Antonio Gibson that has started to creep up, that he's a little bit fumble prone? It caught us a lot last season. It's already happened again this preseason. Is that something you're aware of? And for me, at least, I'm a little bit disappointed because he's a lot of upside in terms of catching the ball and other aspects of being a running back. It's just that ball security that's struggling. So what do you think of that situation?
Yeah, I'm definitely aware of it. He cost me a few fantasy games with those fumbles last year. Yeah, I've been trying to keep an eye on that one is it Brian Robinson?
Yeah.
Is that the other running back? I've been trying to keep an eye on who's going to take the lead on that one. But I have definitely seen Gibson's problems again, and I do see that creeping in throughout the season.
Yeah. The last thing I have to talk about for Washington is something that popped up recently, and on Washington Twitter as well was being discussed, is that sometimes we have an inability to stop key downs, these kind of third and middle distances, even third and short. The thing that jumps out to me is that we seem to play a lot of zone coverage and can't get enough pressure for that to be worth it. I'm wondering, as opposition fans, is that something you notice a lot about Washington, is how when it really comes down to it, there seems to be that extra little bit of space that other teams can take advantage of, that just prolonged drives doesn't always lead to touchdowns necessarily, but just when it could be a drive killer and a momentum changer, it gets a little bit deflated. A third down goes for 6, 8, 10 yards, sets up a new first set of downs into our territory and keeps the ball moving. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's prevent defense, isn't it? It's just allowing the team to dink and dunk and waste their time up the field. And unfortunately, we had Patrick Graham last year as the defensive coordinator, and he was a prevent defense guy. And that works if you have a solid offense that can keep you ahead. But playing prevent defense when you're behind doesn't make any sense, which I'm sure we're both familiar with.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I hope it changes a little bit. I think it can be changed by getting that frontline pressure. And I think that's something that in my opinion, I've seen a lot of people say they've been disappointed that star-studded defensive line for Washington. Personally, I think they've maybe underperformed a little bit, but I don't think it's as dramatic as people have been made out. I think they do a very good job, particularly in the run game last season compared to seasons before where the run game was particularly a problem. But we'll wait and see how that develops. Maybe they're going to try a bit more man or a little bit more pressure and try and change those scenarios. But we'll move on now to the last team of the show, our 8th team. It is the New York Giants. Jake, where would you like me to start on our analysis of the New York Giants?
Let's go. I was going to say, let's go bad to good, but I'm not sure there's enough good to even talk.
In my mind, I know they got Thibodeau. He was really the star man that I was waiting to see how it might impact the team. Beyond that, is there a lot of change that you're excited about in terms of influx of talent?
Yeah, well, one of them obviously was Thibodeau because the Giants have lacked pressure on the edge for years now, so it's nice to actually see making a move to have some pressure on opposing teams' offenses. And then we obviously got Evan Neal at the 7th pick, and that's going to be, he's our right tackle now. So now we actually have a right and a left tackle who are pretty, at least good on paper. So they're 2 players I'm actually excited about. We got a nice wide receiver in the 2nd round, but we didn't really need them considering we have other big names. Now, they don't play like they're big names, but they certainly are big names nonetheless. So we could have done with that pick somewhere else, but we'll see how he goes. He looks quite good, this little wide receiver.
Oh, I saw him. What's his name?
Wan'Dale Robinson.
He's going to be a slot guy for you guys.
Yeah, he's a small dude, but he's shifty, fast, and I think he lines up in the backfield a lot as well. So,
Rian, we've slagged a lot Daniel Jones on this show, and we will continue to do it because he's very slaggable. But is he dangerously good in that he is absolutely not one of these franchise killers that we've talked about, like maybe Derek Carr and Dak Prescott, where they're averagely good to the point where you don't want to move on from them? But is Daniel Jones slightly too good to be bad enough to drag the Giants down to where they need to be to replace him? Does that make sense? That was a very long question. In other words,
there's a lot of double negatives, double positives going on in there. But
how bad can the Giants be with Daniel Jones at quarterback?
I think very bad. Like we've seen it the last couple of years. They've where did they draft this year? 4th, 3rd, and 5th?
5th and 7th.
5th and 7th.
The 7th pick
one
was
of those picks
Bears.
was their own, and they had Daniel Jones at quarterback then. No, the guy just turns the ball over far too much to be a good quarterback, right? And a lot of teams are scoring points off the back of those turnovers because the defense hasn't really lived up to expectations either. So, yeah, I think Daniel Jones might very well be the cause for all of the terribleness on offense. But we'll see. We'll see where they land in the draft next season and whether they can grab one of the big names at quarterback, because I think it's around about time now that they move on from Daniel Jones.
They didn't go for his 5th-year option this year, which was kind of pretty telling that they're not going to give him the 5th year. You don't want to pay him $30 million fully guaranteed or whatever it may be, and you're going to draft a quarterback next year. I assume you can't, unless he absolutely plays like fucking turns into Josh Allen, then you can't keep him.
Yeah, Adam, do you agree with that? Do you think it's 100% nailed on Giants are going to take a quarterback at some point in the 1st round, wherever they land this upcoming draft?
Yeah, I think they have to. we've all trust Daniel Jones already. I don't think I can say anything good about him anyway. You know, he got tackled by a turf monster on what should have been an 80-yard touchdown. Instead, he falls down and flattens his face.
It's hard running fast.
So I wouldn't know about that. I can't see very much upside with his offensive weapons either. You know, he's lost Evan Engram, his tight end. You know, I think Kenny Galladay caught as many touchdowns last year as I did.
Yeah, that's maybe my favorite thing. That's maybe my favorite thing is how hard Jake manifested that man onto his roster, and it just completely let him down. But I was going to say, at least you got rid of Engram. That's actually probably a positive.
That was pretty good to see. I have a signed jersey from Engram somewhere. It's absolutely worthless now, but I'm okay with that. We have a new starting tight end, and in the last week's preseason games, we see an Evan Engram where the ball tips his fingers and into a defender's hand. So hopefully that doesn't become commonplace in the Giants team. But glad to see Evan Engram gone.
So some things never change, huh?
So let's not overreact.
So Jake, before we finish up, what's your highlight, high point, exciting news about the New York Giants this season? What are you looking forward to? Where do you think the silver lining for you as a fan is going to come from this season?
Well, honestly...
Oh, and while we're at it, would you like to put another 2 pitchers, which I'm still owed, on another sweep for the Giants of the Commanders?
I certainly won't, because that was always stacked against me. Even though I know maybe we can do 1-1. If the Giants go 1-1 with the Commanders, maybe we can do something like that. But we won't make that deal right now. Something I'm excited about is just having good foundational pieces on the team now at long last. Like David Gettleman absolutely ruined this team with horrible contracts and bad drafting. So a pretty decent draft this year. Good coaching, which is good. Like some aggressive coaching would be nice on the offensive side. Something that we've been missing for years as well.
Good. Well, thank you all for joining me. This concludes our tour of the AFC East and the NFC East. If you'd enjoyed this and you prefer to get your stuff in audio form, you can find us Under Center Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you get your podcasts. Follow us on socials. The team is growing. We're really trying to push and drive on the socials aspect of the show. You can find us on YouTube at Under Center Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Under Center Podcast. And you can find us on Facebook as well, Under Center Podcast, and Instagram at Under Center Podcast. So we are all over the place. We try and deliver the news as much as we can to keep you up to date. We have started running competitions. In case you've missed it, we gave away a couple of Madden codes over the last week. And we're hoping to keep that stuff going over the course of the season. So please do stay tuned in. We will try to reward your listenership with a few goodies as much as we can. Jake, Ryan, Adam, thank you all for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And we will see everybody next week. Stay safe and goodbye.